My name is Kadamba Kanana Swami. I am one of ISKCON's international leaders traveling around the world. I'm a sannyasi, a monk in the renounced order of life, and also acting as a spiritual teacher, a guru, as it's traditionally called. And in this way I'm guiding people around the world. And I'm here today with you to answer some of your questions. Srila Prabhupada was explaining an analogy of iron. An iron which is a cold metal. When placed in fire, that it becomes hot and eventually becomes like fire and begins to act like fire. So in the same way, Krishna is the source of all spiritual strength. And only in connection with Krishna can any living being gain spiritual strength. So in our relationship with Krishna, we are getting our spiritual strength. Otherwise it's not that one person is born spiritually strong and another person is born spiritually weak. Not necessarily so. Really, our spiritual strength comes from the relationship with Krishna. In that relationship, Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the master and we are the servant. So in our service to Krishna, in our devotional service, that's the source of our strength. And the more we become absorbed in service to Krishna, the more our spiritual strength grows and grows. When one comes to a point of full absorption in serving Krishna 24 hours a day, then one has come to the transcendental platform. And then spiritual strength has reached a level where one is no more affected by the material energy. Otherwise, the material energy is very strong and can very easily bring the living being under control. The material energy is called Maya, or the illusory energy. And when we become controlled by the material energy, the first thing is we think that we are the body. We think that enjoyment through the body is the goal of life. But the fact of the matter is that the soul is temporarily residing in the body. We are not this body. We are eternal spiritual beings, and therefore we can never be satisfied in a relationship with matter. However, due to the illusory energy, we think we can. When one begins to serve Krishna, one is gradually freed from that illusion, from that illusory identification with the body as the self and enjoying material things as the source of pleasure. And one realizes all that is false, and real happiness comes from serving the Supreme Lord. What is spiritual strength really? Spiritual strength is happiness. It's not just temporary happiness, but real lasting happiness. When we are happy in our service to Krishna, then we are strong. Then what can touch us? But when we're not happy in our service to Krishna, then we are weak. Even although externally we pray, we follow all the rituals, but if internally we're not happy in that service, then we are still weak. So happiness in service is a gift. It's not something that we can get on our own. It's a gift. It's a gift from Krishna when Krishna is satisfied with whatever service we've rendered to him. Coming from a business background, business family, well-to-do family, I grew up in a director's town in the Netherlands outside of Amsterdam. There I was educated in the right schools, played with the right kids, lived a very sheltered life, and but materialism was the goal of it. I felt there was a big vacuum, something was really lacking. There was no spiritual depth, there was no time for any such endeavors, and at one point it got too much for me, all that materialism. So I decided to search for deeper spiritual meaning, and shortly after I realized that India was the place which particularly had a lot of information about spiritual pursuits. So when I was 17 I decided to leave home and traveled overland and eventually came to India. It wasn't so easy to leave home because my father was not exactly jumping up and down in ecstasy. It was he became extremely angry and told me he wouldn't give me a cent. But I stayed very calm and I said, that's all right. I think I can make enough with my own energy to get by, and my needs are not so great. So it is all right. So then his anger turned into fear because he had lost his grip on me. And anyway, so I was determined, I left. My father didn't give me a cent. My mother slipped me a little money, as mothers are. Anyway, then I was on the way, and in due course of time, made it to India. And that was, of course, quite an experience at that time. This is sort of 40 years ago. India, 40 years ago, was a totally different world. At that time, life was very traditional and simple. I lived on a few rupees a day in India. A very simple life. A bit of a sadhu life. So, you know, from that, I saw many temples, I saw what kind of culture was there, I began to read books, so gradually I penetrated into the tradition of India, and in that way I came closer and closer to the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. So by the time I got the Bhagavad Gita of Prabhupada in my hands, I was reading it, and I thought, yes, I know all this, although I was still smoking at the time. And I was smoking and throwing ashes on the pages and saying, yes, I know all this, I know all this. Now, of course, after all these years, when I reach the Bhagavad Gita, I will say, I only begin to scratch the surface of this very deep knowledge that Krishna revealed to Arjuna, because it's not so simple to say, I know all this. There are so many levels on which one can know. But yes, it is the Bhagavad Gita that establishes the eternal identity of the soul, the temporary identity of the body, and that truly the soul is what really counts, and the destiny of the soul. That the soul is eternal, that the soul is the eternal servant of Krishna. So that I thoroughly understood from reading Bhagavad Gita. And yeah, at one point I wasn't going to join such an outlandish institution as the Hare Krishna movement, you know, and walk around like this. I really had other plans in life, whatever they were, but somehow or other Krishna kept coming in my life. As I was avoiding Krishna, I got a girlfriend, and she had a dog, and the dog's name, guess what? Krishna. So then at night, I was walking with this dog, and the dog wouldn't come back, and I was calling out loud, Krishna, Krishna. And in this way, I started Harinam Sankirtan around the block, around the neighborhood every night, although I didn't know, and it was unknown spiritual benefit. Now I could see, now I can see that there was a plan behind it, and that all along I thought I was in control of the situation, but actually now I can see there was someone else invisibly pulling all the strings. And in this way we think that we are in control, and meanwhile Supreme Lord invisibly is in control and makes all the arrangements in our life. And that's exactly what happened. So in that way I came into this movement. It wasn't exactly easy for me at first. It was a big cultural change, but because of Prabhupada I had faith. I could see that he was genuine, I could see that he was pure, and I had no doubt about that. So then I went deeper and deeper into this knowledge. I stayed in Vrindavan, which is the place of Krishna, so there one can very quickly absorb so much about this movement. So I got greatly blessed by being there. I stayed there many years, and Vrindavan is a spiritual place, and yeah, that had a great formative role in my life. A place full of temples, full of devotees, full of worship, there also it awoke something in me, a desire to serve Krishna. Okay, we have, as you say, many personalities in our life. Personalities around us, like our parents, family, friends, society, the world population, and name it all, a society which we didn't create it, a society which we were born in, and somehow or other we have to fit in. Then you described how internally it is also as if there are many personalities within us. Okay, you went for the creator, destroyer, maintainer. But psychologists are also dividing up intelligence in sectors. Like, for example, mathematical intelligence, business intelligence, music intelligence, creative intelligence, analytical intelligence, like that. They're also dividing up a personality in different aspects. Astrologers do the same, Jupiter is, if you have a good Jupiter, you have wisdom. If you have a strong Mars, you can get things done. If you have a weak Mars, you can't manage yourself out of a wet bag. Like that, different aspects of personality are there. Now, how do we deal with that? The problem is with all these different aspects and all these personalities is that it creates conflict. We're in conflict with our environment and conflict with ourselves. So what about a devotee? Well, what happens is that the devotee begins to place Krishna and the spiritual master, who are on one line, in the center of his life. The spiritual master or guru is the representative of Krishna. He is the teacher who informs us what Krishna actually wants, what pleases Krishna. So by bringing the spiritual master in the center, all inner conflict is being resolved, because eventually all our qualities begin to aim at that one thing. So there's no problem anymore. We can use our character and every aspect of our character, but now in the service of Krishna. Like, for example, I can use musical talent by singing for Krishna. I can cook for Krishna. I can vent anger for Krishna in protecting Krishna's assets. Someone's trying to destroy it. Okay, now I can let out the angry side of my nature. Hey, what are you doing? What a relief. I didn't need to bottle it up. So in the service of Krishna, every aspect of our personality can be engaged. And there's only one aspect that we have to overcome, and that is envy. Envy within us is that one quality, the envious person within us. He has to go and he has to turn around. The one that is hateful, he has to go. You see, an envious person is trying to be the greatest, trying to be the best, and cannot tolerate others who are in competition. So, if anyone is in competition, then that person has to be pulled down somehow or other, minimized, made smaller, so that I look greater. Therefore, as an envious person, I enjoy when others suffer, and I suffer when others are happy, because it means they're successful. So this kind of envious mentality is the big material disease, and that we have to conquer. And that we have to conquer by learning to be kind, learning to be generous, learning for the welfare of others. Initially, in a spirit of practice, and then gradually coming out more spontaneous. So in this way, we emerge as a merciful person, as a person who brings people to the goal of life. Compassion, what is it? If I give a poor man some money, yeah, but what will that money do for him? Give him some temporary relief. But if I give a poor man some devotional service, eternal spiritual service, then the poor man is eternally uplifted. And if we engage in that, in uplifting others by connecting them with the Supreme Lord, that's where envy is overcome. But as long as we are on the material plane, then this is my garden, and here is my wall, and this is my land, and why are you parking your car on my land? Yeah? Then I and mine will govern our minds, and that creates all the trouble in the world. I and mine. That's inner conflict and social conflict. The Vedic literatures are giving a very complete analysis. And basically what they explain is this, is that within the universe there are heavenly regions, there in the higher planetary systems, in the middle planetary systems there are regions where there's happiness and distress. We are there now. And then in the lower planetary regions there is suffering. Call it hell if you like. That's within the universe. And within the universe, everything is bound by time. Therefore, even if one attains the higher regions in the universe, one can be there only temporary. So these stages of heavenly planets, middle planets, lower planets, within the universe are all within the realm of temporary material existence. They're not important. What is really of interest is the spiritual world. The spiritual world is eternal, the eternal world. So when we are defining what some call heaven, what some call the spiritual world, we're speaking of the eternal world, where the soul may go eternally. So the eternal world is the natural home of the living being. That is because it is the natural home of the Supreme Lord. We should imagine the spiritual world as a place, not only where the living beings go that have been good and then they can enjoy forever. No, it is an abode where the Lord is the center and where service to the Lord is the all in all. It is an ocean of nectarian experience. There is no influence of time. There is no suffering. There's no old age, no pain. There is only ever increasing love in the exchange of service with the Supreme Lord. The devotees serve the Lord, and the Lord, who we call Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead Krishna, he serves all living beings. So there's an intimate, loving exchange going on. Supreme Lord, he can exchange with everyone. So that's the spiritual world. One can go there if one has fully satisfied Krishna in service in this world. Then we can attain that. It can be at the end of this life, or it can be after many lives. That depends. Whenever Krishna is satisfied with our service, then that's our entrance ticket into the spiritual sky. Like that. It depends. If you have made great sacrifice nonetheless, even if on some details you were not so strict, but if you're very sincere, then still something extraordinary can happen. Maybe out of mercy the Lord will take you back. I know someone what was his name now? Anyway, I knew someone who was from my hometown, and he became involved with Krishna consciousness, but he was never so strict with some of the rules, some of the principles, what to do. But he was very bold. And he did things like he went to to the director of a big chain store, like that has shops all over the country, big warehouses, and said, "You don't have the books of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in your bookstores. Why not?" I said, "They're very nice." The director said, "Young man, I like you. You've got guts." He said, no one walks into my office like that. He said, "You know what? I'll take them." So he got all the books in all the chain stores all over the country. Then later he went to the government and he got a house and a vehicle for Food for Life. He was dynamic. He knew lots of people. But because of the principles, not so strict and so on, I lost track of him. But then I got news that he had AIDS. And I was for a couple of days in the country actually, because I'm not often in the Netherlands, but I was there just, and they said, "Oh, he's in a clinic nearby and he's in his final days. Would you like to go see him?" I said, "Okay, go see him." I went there. He coughed and a ball of mucus the size of a tennis ball came out, He had caught some pneumonia that usually only birds get. But when, the immune system is down, God knows what can happen. It was terrible. So anyway, then he says, "I like your kirtan, I like your singing. Can you sing on my funeral?" So what could I say, I had to say, "Yes, of course, I was thinking in the back of the mind, well, I wasn't planning to be there in the country, but because I was leaving. Anyway, he died within days after, and I was still in the country. So I went for the funeral. And then during the funeral, first someone read a letter. And when they read the letter, he said, "So, you all think that I'm dead, but I've got news for you. I'm still alive." You know what I mean? I'm still here, but I've just given up this body. Just that you know now. So there's nothing to cry. Now, you're all my friends, and you're all very different. And today, because it's my funeral, I want you to appreciate each other. Now, within a few minutes, someone from the Hare Krishna movement will come forward and will start singing the Hare Krishna song. And I want you to all sing along. And not a little bit, but with full enthusiasm. Well, then it was my turn, and we started singing just simple tune, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And this lady, kind of well-built and huge, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The opera was right there. People got into it. And then he arranged, it was an amphitheater, like chairs come from up to down, and on the stage there was a box with his body. And then at the end, they played the Govindam tape. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. And the box was sinking in the stage. And people cracked. They fell in each other's arms. And later they said, "God, we never went to a funeral like this." I tell you, that devotee, he had a spirit, right? Maybe he didn't follow all the rules to the T, right? But he did something. He did something. He got a lot of mercy, that's for sure. Where he went, we cannot say for sure. But even if you're not perfectly following everything, never give up the spirit to do service full of enthusiasm. In that way, you'll get the mercy. Bhagavad Gita gives a verse. It says, "Itcha dvesa samutena dvandumena bharata sarvabhutani samahan sargayanti parantapa." It is said that all living beings in this material world are overcome by the delusion of lust and envy. Right? Lust can be overcome easily if we are just remaining very busy in service to Krishna. In the beginning, of course, lust is very strong. And the desire to enjoy sex life is controlling all living beings, right? In all species. From the birds to the germs, all living beings are controlled by sex desire. Even in the higher planets, controlled by sex desire. But if we just become absorbed in service, right, then in the beginning, externally we can overcome that sex desire. We begin to follow principles that we couldn't follow before. And gradually, internally, we will overcome that sex desire. And, for some are more afflicted than others by lust. Those who are very afflicted at one stage could decide to get married, and then in marriage they can carry on with service, and together with the wife overcome that lust by doing a lot of service to Krishna. Lust means basically admendriya pritivansataraboli. It basically means for my senses. My life is for my senses, my tongue, my eyes, everything for me. But actually life is about Krishnendriya, about the senses of Krishna. So we're trying to serve the senses of Krishna, and gradually we get some taste in that service. And as we're getting taste in that service, lust will diminish. And then as the taste grows and we go deeper and deeper, yes, then gradually we'll become more absorbed. Lust will go, and envy through service attitude will go. The battle is described in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, where Salva with a plane was attacking from the sky. That plane was very advanced. One moment it was there, next moment it was there. It was very difficult to deal with. So certainly was a lot of havoc from that attack. But that attack was actually warded off successfully. It was not that attack was the cause of Dwarka becoming the lost city. Right? Dwarka simply became, in due course of time, after the disappearance of Krishna, became inundated by the ocean. It sank into the ocean. Right? As by an arrangement of Krishna to become like invisible to the world, it fulfilled its purpose when Krishna performed his pastimes, and to hide also Krishna's opulences from the atheists. You can imagine, right? The atheists the materialists would have loved to move in to Dwarka, say, hey, great, now we got Krishna's kingdom without Krishna. What better? This is what we always wanted. No, so it disappeared. Krishna withdrew his pastimes from the planet. He moved on, like the sun moves on, leaves South Africa and goes towards Europe, or more towards Australia, whatever. So in this way, we see that Krishna performs his pastimes, sometimes visible, sometimes not visible. So he withdrew Dwarka. Now they begin to find some archaeological evidence that indeed there was something. That it wasn't just stories in the scripture, but that there was something. Just like all the other places related to Krishna are there. Kurukshetra, the place where the Bhagavad Gita is spoken, is there. Delhi, Hastinapur, the city of the Pandavas, of Arjuna, the friend of Krishna from Bhagavad Gita, is part of Delhi. And Dwarka, now in Gujarat, Krishna's city, we also begin to find remnants in the oceans. Yes. There are always battles going on eternally between the godly and the demoniac forces. No, coexistence is there, but it's not that all coexistence will be peaceful. Right. There will always be confrontation between the godly and the demoniac. Yeah. No, that will not come to an end, but it can be contained. Yeah, it can be contained. But there will always be some demoniac personalities, but at some times the demoniac personalities are contained by godly men and very limited, and at other times the demoniac are ruling over the godly men and suppressing them. So there certainly will be a time when demoniac personalities will be very much subdued and limited and will have to be in hiding. But in due course of time, they will also emerge again. And these are the natural waves of time. And that is material existence. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. But the material world is always going to be a place where confrontation cannot be avoided. So if you want eternal peace, have to go to the spiritual world. In the material world, it doesn't exist. Let's say like this, those who worship demigods, yes, they will attain those destinations, the abode of those demigods. Those who worship the Supreme Lord, they will attain the Supreme Lord. Those who are not worshipping at all, they will stay in this world and they will suffer. And they will develop sinful qualities of exploitation. So first of all, it's already quite a step when a person starts to worship. A person who doesn't worship is basically a person who's exploitive. Some are exploitive, covered over by a layer of compassion, but still exploitive to a degree. Others are not compassionate at all and totally exploitive. Then you get those who begin to worship. Alright, there are some who worship only for material benefit. They bring an exploitive mentality into worship. But at least there is a beginning of bowing down to a superior being. Those who are worshipping the Supreme Lord, then there are again some who bring some exploitiveness in there also. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? And type of mentality. Yeah? So that will be, but for those who purely worship the Supreme Lord, just for one purpose, to please Him, yes, they will inherit the kingdom of God. For them there will be peace, and only for them. And no one else will find peace of mind, because they will be driven by their own lusty and envious desires to exploit the material nature and exploit other living beings. But those who are pure and dedicated to please the Lord, they will be free. They will have interior peace, they can give peace. They are the carriers of happiness. Now, Hare Krishna is a beautiful conclusion. I think we hope this event is a special event because it's a kirtan event, and a kirtan event is really the most powerful tool to uplift the consciousness from selfishness to purity. And it's simple, anyone can partake. So follow the melody on the video, and I'm sure you'll get the hang of it.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare